I've come to Madrid to talk about sustainability, particularly in cities. And cities all over the world really are suffering from the same kinds of problems. More and more pollution, busier and busier places, more stress, and climate change is actually adding to the problems. It's making our cities even hotter. It's making the weather patterns more and more extreme. So in the UK, we suffer from really heavy rainfall from time to time. Here in Madrid, you suffer from very long periods with no rain at all. And the cities just concentrate those problems. And I'm a landscape architect, I'm a horticulturalist, so I have to believe that part of the solution lies in the greenness of cities, the number of trees, the wildlife, just those elements of the landscape that can help to moderate the extremes of the climate. Cities vary a lot, but the thing to remember, I think, is that for the first time in history, more than half of the world's population now live in urban areas. And all of those urban areas are growing. The estimate is that by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in towns and cities. And the conditions are more extreme in a big city with high buildings and lots of reflective surfaces and not much space for green space. But actually just large concentrations of people wherever they are bring all kinds of stresses and problems. So I think you have to apply the ideas to the particular city you're dealing with. And in the UK, London is a very different set of issues from Manchester or Birmingham, and no doubt the same applies to Spanish cities. But basically, if you can make the cities greener, cooler, more absorbent, so that they absorb the pollution and they absorb the rainfall, then they become healthier places for people. And that has to be the long-term aim. I think we need to operate on a whole range of different levels. It's really important that governments, national governments and regional governments think about the big picture, think about policies that make whole cities greener. But it's also important to realize that as an individual, you can make a difference. Now, I'm very lucky. I live in a big city, but I have a house with a small garden. And in that garden, I can plant the plants that are very good for butterflies. I can put food out for the birds. I've built a pond so that the frogs are happy in my garden. If you're in a tower block and you only have a small balcony or a terrace, then you can still grow plants that will help to reduce the glare from the sun and provide nectar and pollen for the passing insects. You can still feed the birds. And in small ways, I think lots and lots of individuals making a small contribution adds up to a bigger and bigger impact. And if those people then begin to look over the boundary and start to think, well, if I can do this here, why can't it happen in the park, in the street, in the school grounds? Then you have a revolution on your hands. And that's really what we need. We need a mass movement of people saying, cities don't have to be hostile places. They don't have to be uncomfortable. They don't have to be unhealthy. But we need to work at making them much better. One of the things that I've been personally involved with for a long time, 40 years now, is encouraging people who have some outdoor space that they can manage that outdoor space with nature rather than against nature. When I was a student, half a century ago, I was being taught how to kill everything because that's what horticulture and agriculture were and to a large extent still are all about. But I've learned and I've helped other people to learn that actually you can work with nature, you can live without pesticides, you can grow the plants that are very good to encourage butterflies. So put very simply, if you grow single flowers without lots and lots of petals, then they tend to be better for the butterflies and the bees. They have more nectar and more pollen. If you grow shrubs, plants that have berries, fruit in the winter, then they'll provide natural food for the birds. If you provide any amount of water in the garden, then the wildlife from the neighbourhood will come and visit you. And that really is just a different way of thinking about what gardens can do. They still need to be gardens, they still need to be beautiful. I always say that the real test is that they shouldn't be an embarrassment to the neighbours. They should be nice gardens, but they can be full of birdsong and they can be alive the whole year round. One idea that seems to really capture people's imagination is something which I started 30 years ago on my 40th birthday. I decided it would be very nice to have people who I couldn't see on that day getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and listening to the birds singing. And every morning in the spring particularly, people will know that there is this amazing thing that happens. Before the sun comes up, the birds start to sing all over the neighbourhood, and it gets louder and louder and louder and more wonderful. And it lasts for about half an hour. And we call that in England the dawn chorus. And then I thought, well, actually, lots of other people might be interested in doing the same thing. So now, on the first Sunday in May, we celebrate International Dawn Chorus Day. And for 30 years now, the number of countries, the number of organisations have got bigger and bigger. And some organisations use it as an opportunity to bring people perhaps in wheelchairs or who have difficulty in getting out into the open air, gathering them together to share that special moment on that special day. And last year, for me, it just really achieved a new level, because there was a radio programme organised by the radio company in Ireland that linked up 30 different countries with live radio, starting with the dawn, with the sun starting to rise in India, and then travelling across through India, Russia, Europe, and all the way through to Ireland and then on to Canada. So as the sun moved and the birds woke up, we were hearing the birds and hearing different people in different languages talking about their dawn chorus. And obviously it happens in Spain, and I would hope that perhaps on the first Sunday in May next year there will be lots of International Dawn Chorus Day events, which would be good. A lot's changed in my lifetime, and when I was a boy, 8 or 9 years old, I had a wonderful life because I was free to roam, to wander around my neighbourhood. I used to leave home at 9, 8 o'clock in the morning and go and fish for fish and tadpoles, you know, the little frogs, and I would come home after tea time covered in mud and wet and happy. And I learned a lot through that process, and I used to climb trees and I used to build shelters and do all the things that most of the children of my age at that time were free to do. Now, all these years later, it's very difficult. Parents are really worried to let their children roam away from home. And what that means is that they're not having that freedom to learn about nature, to have that kind of contact with nature, unless we provide for it where they're safe. I mean, I would argue that they're safe anyway. I don't think things have really changed, but public perception has changed more than anything else. And so it means that the safe places, that is the gardens, the school grounds, the playgrounds, those kinds of areas, public parks, those are the places where we now have to provide that opportunity for children. And all over the world, but certainly all over Europe, there are community groups who organise events in parks so that they can let children climb trees and build shelters. And I just think, I know that for me that shaped my whole life, and it would be a tragedy if this generation of young children were denied that kind of opportunity. From my point of view, when I look out of my window and I see the green leaves on the trees and I hear the birds singing, I just know that I feel better. I just know that that reduces the stress that I'm feeling. It makes the day feel better. And I just think that at that fundamental level, we need contact with nature in our daily lives. And it's perfectly possible to make sure that people have that experience wherever they live, wherever they work. And there's plenty of evidence now to show that if that happens, not only are people happier and healthier, they're more productive, they work better. So for all kinds of reasons, the human condition is improved by living and working in an environment where there is contact with nature.